In the past few years, we've heard the term free agents and been told we would all need to become one in order to succeed. The recent economic structures have helped to promote this concept as reality. Where do we get the tools to take control of our career path in the present and future? Welcome to the Career Confidante with your host, Marie Zimenoff. Marie and her guest experts are here to provide you with the tools you need to move forward and achieve your career goals. Now, here is Marie Zimenoff.
Welcome to the Career Confidante, and we're excited to have you here today and learn about how you can handle unexpected interview questions or unexpected interview situations with my lovely guest, Kathleen Dohoney. So Kathleen, you have been a recruiter, you've been in outplacement, you're a coach, you've just seen a lot where people are struggling with their interviews. So we're glad for you to join us here today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is a pleasure.
Yeah. So why did this specific topic, so you're doing a presentation at our upcoming symposium, and this was the topic that you and LaTanya Pouncey, your co-presenter, chose. Tell me where this idea for unpredictable interview challenges came in.
Great question. So, as you said, LaTanya and I have been working with many clients over the last several years, and I've actually have seen markets up and down. But the difference is this time, I think with a lot of the clients, they are trying the old way. It's not working today. They're also saying to us, I did everything that I was supposed to do, that I read online, and it's not working out. So we had really kind of discovered that there is a lot of challenges, and the best way to get our clients prepared is to help them realize what the challenges are, but not that, and what are the best ways to be prepared for something that didn't go textbook perfect.
Yeah. So you're looking at the market's changed. It's more competitive, right?
Yes.
And interviewers have changed a little bit too, right? They're doing some different things to try to make sure that candidates are being authentic with them. And so let's talk about some of these challenges that you're seeing come up. We'll dive into a few, but what are some of the top ones that are on the tip of your tongue?
So one would be not prepared when a client is, I would say, prepared for the interview with salary at the end. So when the salary portion comes up, they are not, they're afraid to negotiate. They're also afraid to even throw out a number. And so they're not very well versed on what to do, and they're leaving money on the table. The second thing is that clients are, I would say, being challenged with it's not just the research, but hiring manager didn't show up. The recruiter has been really short, and the interview that was supposed to be 20, 30 minutes ended up being 5. They were not prepared for the amount of homework that they needed to do. So I think what the bottom line is, they become flustered and they're not prepared for the change and able to make the switch. It's also, I would say, they've never really encountered this before. Hey, I've always interviewed and I've never had this happen. And I would say that many clients who are new to the market are also unaware of how to actually handle all of this AI being ghosted, as well as robocalls to prepare, and not really sure what they're supposed to say to a phone call. That's has thrown a lot of people off.
Okay. Well, let's dive into a few of those. So let's start with that unprepared interviewer. So maybe the person that was supposed to interview them isn't there, so the recruiter's taking over. Maybe it's just that the interviewer isn't prepared in general, and things seem to be going really short or stilted, or it just doesn't feel like it's flowing. What can we do to help a client maybe even take a little bit more control over the situation to make sure the hiring manager or recruiter, whoever they're talking to, learns about them?
So it could be two things. It could be one where the interviewer, and that could be the recruiter, is talking the whole entire time. Here's the job, here's what you're going to expect, and here's where you're going to work, on and on and on. Uh, Many times the candidate feels like, oh, this was great. No one asked me a question and they must like me. But the truth is that they know nothing about you. So it's okay to interject a question. It's okay. I heard you say, and it might be a gentle interruption. But if you're going to walk away, you're going to miss an opportunity to have sold yourself and be able to get the company or recruiter or hiring manager to understand how you become a fit. Don't take the idea that a recruiter did all the talking as a good sign. That could be that they're inexperienced and you've missed that opportunity to sell yourself, or at least have a few things that you can talk to about how you are qualified for the job.
Yeah. So they might want to still figure out a way to get in some of the stories they've prepared, to work those in, even if a direct question isn't asked, so that they have more memorability.
Could be you might say, oh, hi, I heard you say that you needed someone to do X. May I share with you what I have done at my previous company? And here are a few things that I found have worked. And most of us are taught not to interrupt. Most of us are taught to be very polite. But if this is a job that you really feel that you've qualified for, you're letting them steer the boat. And the fact is that many times they're just not sure what to ask. So it's okay for you to jump in when you can. This is your chance to let them know all the things that you have done that will be relevant for them in their company.
Yeah. I love that. We've got to find a way to tell at least something about our qualifications and our stories, some of those pieces. Now, one of the other things that you talked about was robocalls. And maybe we could also fit into this category, kind of those one-way recorded interviews where someone's calling or you're hopping on and you've got to record yourself. What should people do to be more successful there?
The number one thing that most people don't do is preparation and practice. So you really need it's not enough just to have your stories, but it's really important to say it out loud. What comes out of your head may not sound what it says out, as you think you want to say out loud.
Right.
So the robocall tends to be and it throws people off. It tends to be the replacement of a recruiter. Walk me through your resume, tell me about yourself, why you want to work here. And if you haven't really gone through and answered those questions, whether you do it through a robocall, a video, one-way interview, or with a recruiter, it's still not going to go smooth. So practice is super important, and a lot of people skip that. I know my resume and I know myself. And I like to say that there's not really anybody, not even unless you're a improv comedian, most everyone practice.
Yeah. Yeah. We just had a session with our speaker coach, Cindy Skalicki, right? She came in and was
Yeah.
talking to all of the presenters for the symposium. And she was talking about this, how she wants you to practice the first 5 to 7 minutes of your presentation. And job seekers often, like you said, I got some bullet points. But it's different when you speak it and you hear what you say and you get the words out of your mouth. You feel like, do I stumble? Do I say the words that I'm thinking? Does it come out right? How's my intonation? And you just can't do any of that if you're not practicing. So I like your idea, especially of practicing the tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume. That's likely to be the first question. And you can really hit it out of the park, if you will, if you've practiced it a little bit.
And I would also suggest practicing with someone else. When you do it alone, one of let me step back for a minute. Sometimes I'll have people say, I did all of this, and what's wrong? My interview didn't go well. But when you practice with them, you might hear they're monotoned, they don't seem enthusiastic. And that's not such a bad quality, but what you might find is that they are stumbling and they're not sure and they're confused in their story. So practice with someone else will give them sort of that ability to calm the nerves, and then they feel a little bit more confident when they do go forward.
Yeah. And that's so hard, right? Because nervousness can make it sound like it's not a true story, that you're making it up, right? But it's just that you are nervous. And so the more you practice, it can sound that way. The other thing that recruiters are seeing is, of course, the new systems where you can use AI to write an answer real time in the interview. And so if people are pausing too long, it can feel like you're trying to read one of those answers, right? And so we just want to be aware of those things and keep your eye contact, make sure you're talking to the person, and maybe even saying, "Oh, that's a good question. Let me think about it." And watching when I look down at my notes, or maybe even saying, "Oh, I have a few notes here. I'm going to look at those," so that people know what you're doing and don't feel like you're trying to hide some kind of sneaky technology that they're just not ready for. They're just not ready for you to use that yet.
Well, it also sounds like everyone else, pretty canned. It doesn't sound as if you've put any thought into it. And in fact, it doesn't even show that you have critical thinking skills, any kind of communication skills. And that you're going to communicate with everyone in the company, no matter what job you have. It's really important to be able to, they're not asking you to do a stand-up presentation, but they do want to get a gauge on how well you do communicate.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is great just to think about what are the challenges that they might be facing today that they didn't face, even a few years ago. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about age bias, because I see that on our list here today. And I know that's a big topic that people are talking about. And then also just a little bit more of the technology pieces. Maybe if the camera is off or you're not sure what to do with that, how do we address that? So we'll take a short break. And when we come back, we'll dive into more of that content. Now, again, Kathleen is one of the speakers at our upcoming in-person symposium for career services providers. So if you are wanting to get out there, meet some new folks, and learn some of the leading edge information in the career space, we look forward to seeing you in Baltimore. And you can check that out at careertl.com/2025 symposium. You always go to careerthoughtleaders.com and find all of that information. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
You know that the career landscape has changed and that you need to be proactive about managing your career. You can have the foresight, skills, and confidence you need to take charge of your career and seize opportunities. A strategic advantage and career expert, Marie Zimenoff has helped thousands of leaders like you get focused, get found, and get hired. Visit getcareersmart.com to find out more. That's getcareersmart.com or call 800-521-2080 to schedule your complimentary consultation.
Voice America is on LinkedIn. Connect with us today. You are tuned in to the Career Confidant with Marie Zimenoff. If you have a question or comment for Marie or her guest today, please call 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You may also send an email to marie@strategicadvantage.com. Now, back to the Career Confidant.
Welcome back to the Career Confidant. And today we've been talking with Kathleen Dohoney, and we've been going through some of the interview mishaps that are happening right now. The hiring manager not asking good questions, or maybe not being prepared for the interview. Perhaps you've got this one-way interview or a robocall that you have to do. So let's talk a little bit about the virtual real-time interviews, because I think we've been doing them for a while, right? It started a lot during COVID. I almost feel like we've gotten a little lazy with it. And now sometimes people show up with the camera off. Sometimes the camera's on. How do we help job seekers navigate this nebulousness that is happening right now on Zoom?
Yeah, and one of the first things that most candidates feel like, I'm going into an interview and the hiring manager, of course, is going to be professional and turn on the camera. And what happens when it doesn't? And it throws people off because now they're interviewing and they can't see anything. They cannot see the facial. So one of the ways I has suggested is, as a gentle reminder, hi, I can not see you. I can see that my camera's showing. Are you able to see me? Because I can't see you. And see what happens. You're not calling them out, but you're actually just reminding them. It could be a technological side that they couldn't get the camera to work. So it's not always that they just want to be hidden. They may not know. At least you're giving them the graceful way to get it back on and get the camera going. I'll tell a quick story. A few years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago, I interviewed with someone who had the camera off, and it was the hiring manager, who, by the way, was in an industry that should have known better. And, I thought about it after, and it didn't sit well with me because the person wouldn't turn the camera on. So that, to me, maybe tells volumes about the company or the culture. So that's an idea to think, well, maybe I don't want to move forward with this company. And I'm not saying that's the only reason, but keep in mind that that can be something that can be easily corrected within a minute. Cannot see you. Would you mind turning your camera on?
Well, and I liked how you said it before, because you don't necessarily have to ask them to turn their camera on, but you can just bring it up and say, just to check, I can't see you. Are you able to see my video? Mm-hmm. It brings it up without asking them necessarily to turn it on. It also maybe opens the door for them to say, oh, we don't need video. If you want to turn yours off, that's fine. Because maybe they just don't want to do video, which is fine as long as they let it go both ways, right? So I love that way of bringing it up, just a tech check versus something else, because this is one of the other trends that we've seen is people kind of pushing back about everything having to be on video. Although I would love for them to let you know up front, what if it's on Zoom, are we doing video on or not? Because otherwise, I think for an interview, we assume it's going to be video on because that would make the most sense for an interview. But I know there is some pushback against that. And to me, it's fine if the interviewer is not doing video for some reason, but then it should be that the interviewee doesn't do their video either. One way or the other is my thought.
Yeah, but I also wonder, is this the way you're going to be working together as a team going forward? If I was to walk in person, we would see you and we would see each other. And the other thing I would always recommend, please be dressed for the interview and dress for the job you want. You never know, even if they say the camera's off, someone else could come in, interview you and want the camera on, and surprise, you're not ready.
Yeah, yes, I agree with that whole 100%. And the pushback against the video has to do with neurodiversity. So there's companies that are sensitive to neurodiversity that have realized that the camera may add an element that isn't helpful. Mm-hmm. When you're in person, there's a much different feel and opportunity for all people, but especially for those who are neurodiverse, versus the camera being particularly troublesome, eye contact and those types of things. So I think there may be a good purpose behind it, but they should be hopefully more upfront about that. And then the candidate can just mention, like you said, hey, I can't see you. Can you see me? And that just opens the door for the recruiter to fix the problem, hopefully. Maybe they had theirs off for the last interview because it was someone who had requested accommodation or whatever it might be.
Right. And I think it's just helpful to get that information up front.
Yeah. And it's a question that people can ask if you see that your interview has been scheduled to be on Zoom or whatever platform. You could reach back out, do you think, and ask if the cameras will be in use?
sometimes you have a really good recruiter that will work with you on doing that. But some companies, you're directly working with the hiring manager, so you're not quite sure. But it's if the way you position it is really giving everyone a graceful way out, so to speak. Is the camera going to be on? I just want to make sure my camera's working and that we're prepared.
Yep.
It's just a simple question anymore than back when you used to go in for face-to-face interviews. Is there a parking lot that I can for visitors? Some companies are so large, you could be driving around looking for a parking space.
Yeah. And don't know, just thought here. I've heard that people are bringing more interviews back in person because of the technology that we were just talking about. Are you seeing that at all with your clients, more in-person interviews?
It's been 50-50. If the first one or two may be virtual, phone, some kind of digital type of interview, but as it gets further along, if it's a hybrid position, absolutely, they are going in for the interview.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that changes. So let's just for a few minutes talk about age bias. We see a lot of conversation around that. Have a lot of our more experienced workers that are coming back to work if they've taken a little break or whatever. What are your tips? Maybe just 2 tips for people who are in that experience-rich category that are coming back and interviewing. How can they mitigate age bias?
Understand technology. Really understand how it works. You don't want to be fumbling. You really practice if it's a WebEx, MS Teams, Google Meet, Zoom. Make sure everything's set up beforehand so that you are not trying to load up the software. So that goes for everyone, honestly, because every company uses something different. The other thing I think is important, practice with someone to have a presence on the camera. So many times interviewing people, their head is turned, they're looking down, and they're also have the laptop so they're looking up. It tends to be showing age because a lot of and it's just how it sounds, is that, well, everyone younger is much more technology savvy. So they don't want that as something to show that you aren't.
Yeah, make sure you've got the setup. I was doing a presentation on Teams last week, I guess, and I don't do things on Teams very often. And so I was fumbling a little bit like, oh man, I need to get some colleagues to do some Teams meetings with me just so I can find all the buttons and the, screen share. And when I screen shared, I couldn't see the people anymore. Like I don't know that system well enough because I don't do things in it. And so you're right. When you're going to do an interview, know what platform they're going to use, and then see if you can get some people to do a little bit of a test with you so that you aren't fumbling.
Right. It really throws off the interview, and because you're an older candidate, the automatic assumption is you don't know technology. This can happen to anybody. You can be on Teams, but then you have to go to WebEx, and WebEx is not that easy either. So it does take a little practice.
Yeah. Anything else in terms, the experience and the skills, how do they make sure they kind of right size that for the job?
I'm going to use 2 words, forward thinking. I think what happens is a lot of them are like, well, way back when, and this is what we used to do, and just avoid that language. It's really thinking about and understanding what that particular job needs and what the company needs. And we could spend half an hour on talking about how to do that, but being able to articulate what it is that you do to help them now and not be in the rearview mirror talking about everything that we've ever done or what I've ever done before. Because then you start digging by mistake, you might be going way back, too far back. So keep it forward thinking and always how it's going to help the employer.
Excellent. All right. So we've talked a little bit about how you're coming to Baltimore, and we're going to share some of the
Yes.
more detail and more tips with our colleagues, career service practitioners there. Give me a few takeaways that people can look forward to if they come and join us in Baltimore.
Yeah, sure. So our audience is coaches, right? And so they may have a service to work with clients on interviews. But as we talked about, that there are a lot of challenges in this market. So we want to provide some tips on how to handle the challenges and what are things that you can do to prepare your client for an interview that didn't go textbook perfect. We're going to be also offering a salary negotiation workshop, and we want the coaches to have some resources to use. LaTanya and I went through your course, Marie, Certified Salary Negotiation and Compensation Consideration. And this was really a way to teach us how candidates can leverage their skills, how to approach the offer to get the best packages for them. But one of the things that's also important is understand if it's not the right fit or if the offer is rescinded, how do you handle that? So we will be covering some of these tips and resources.
Oh, that's a challenging situation for sure. Well, I'm so excited to see you in Baltimore, and I hope people are taking away some tips here on how you can prepare for interviews, how handle some of these technical snafus that happen, and we will look forward to seeing you in Baltimore. Thank you for sharing your stuff. We're going to take a short break, and we'll say goodbye to Kathleen, but we'll be back here in just a few minutes on the Career Confidante.
You know that the career landscape has changed and that you need to be proactive about managing your career. You can have the foresight, skills, and confidence you need to take charge of your career and seize opportunities. A strategic advantage and career expert, Marie Zimenoff has helped thousands of leaders like you get focused, get found, and get hired. Visit getcareersmart.com to find out more. That's getcareersmart.com or call 800-521-2080 to schedule your complimentary consultation. When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are tuned in to the Career Confidante with Marie Zimenoff. If you have a question or comment for Marie or her guest today, please call 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You may also send an email to marie@strategicadvantage.com. Now, back to the Career Confidante.
Welcome back to the Career Confidante. And today we were talking with Kathleen Dohoney about how you can prepare for these unexpected things that come up in interviews. And she just got me thinking about the power of preparation. And I know that this is one of those sticking points that everybody goes, yeah, I know. But then we don't do it. And it feels a lot to me like a presentation, and maybe we don't want to do that. We're nervous about it, so we procrastinate it. But then what happens is because we didn't prepare, we don't do well. And so it's this weird neuroscience thing that we do to ourselves, right? Where I didn't prepare, so I didn't do well. But that kind of reinforces that it's not worth preparing because I'm not going to do well anyways. When if you go back and you really look at it, the reason that you didn't do well is because you didn't prepare. And it is true for me when I've got a big presentation, you're nervous. And so you don't prepare as much ahead of time as you could, because thinking about it, when you prepare, you get more nervous. And so that we have to fight that bug. And like I said, Cindy Skalicki was just coming into our presenter group for the symposium and talking about preparing and practicing that first few minutes of your presentation. And I loved what she said because she brought it back to the purpose of why you're there. And that idea that you're there to communicate with other people. And you want to think about, what do you want them to get out of it? What do you want to get out of it? And this is true for an interview as well. Although it may seem obvious, we need to sit down and really think about, okay, I've got this interview, and reconnect with why you applied to the job. Why were you interested in the job? Why do you want to work there? Let's reconnect kind of your brain, your body to that feeling of why you care. And that's good, right? And to realize that the nervousness is good because it shows that you care. But you don't want the nervousness to get in the way of preparation, because that, oh, I've got this, or oh, I'll prepare later, those are all defense mechanisms to keep us from having to feel the negative pressure, the negative emotion of anxiety, right? But it's not helpful, because you still have to do that thing. And now you're going to do it unprepared because the anxiety got in the way of you preparing. Like, you see this little circle that happens, and it's all happening up here in our head, right? And we, depending on our defense mechanism and how great we are at doing that to ourselves, we might have even convinced ourselves that I don't need to prepare, or that I do better when I don't prepare. Those are false narratives, right? That's not true. There is not a professional speaker in this world that shows up on a stage without having put together, practiced, having the stories, yes, maybe bullet pointing them out, but at some point speaking it out loud. And this is the number one thing I hear people say about, especially with interviews, is, oh, I've got my bullet points for my stories. That's great. But if you've never spoken that story out loud, you're going to speak that story out loud in front of everyone else for the first time. When you start to pick it apart, it just makes absolutely no sense. I want you to practice your stories. Are you going to say that exact same thing in the interview? No. Will you get asked that exact same question? No. But when you've spoken that story out loud, you can adjust it, which, by the way, is what good presenters do. Yes, they have this prepared presentation in their head, but then they adapt it based on the audience, based on clues in the audience, based on the people that they meet right before they go on stage. And when they know their stories really well, they're actually better able to make adjustments on the fly, because they've like internalized the story. So people say, oh, don't memorize, because then you can get yourself in trouble when you get mixed up. And you're right. I don't want you to memorize. I want you to internalize, like the story you tell about how you met your spouse, or when your kids were born, or when you got that puppy, right? That story just flows from you because it's internalized. You've said it so many times, you know it so well. That's what I want at least a few of your interview stories to feel like. And tell me about yourself. And Kathleen was talking about this. Tell me about yourself, or walk me through your resume, should be like that. It should be an internalized story that you have told over and over and over again, that's you tweak for the specific job, the specific audience, company that you're going into. But it shouldn't be memorized. It should be internalized. It's something that you could tell, on a moment's notice when you're not working or whatever, right? There's so many other ways that you can use that story, those stories from there that can be helpful. So that's the number one thing I would say with preparation. And if you are in a job search, you don't need to wait until you have an interview to start doing that work. And having a specific job, a specific thing can make sense for some contexts, but you don't need it for your baseline. So you could start working on your baseline. Tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are some of your key accomplishment stories? You could start working on those now. Telling them when you're driving, speaking them out loud when you're in the shower, whatever it might be, but you're starting to hear yourself tell that story. And that's so powerful because it brings you confidence, it gets you prepared, and then it makes sure that you're not saying those words for the first time out loud in a high pressure situation. Now, the best way to kind of put a framework around it is to think about what skills are really needed for this job. And if you're applying to a few different types of jobs, you might create little buckets, right? So I've got my accounting bucket, I've got my operations bucket, whatever. And you think, okay, so for this type of job, what are the main types of skills that they're looking for? And then I can start my little mind map of stories that share, when have I done those things? And this is a great opportunity to just start a database. If you like the actual visual mind map, use your favorite mind mapping tool and start getting those things down. Here's the skill, and here's all the examples I have of when I've used that skill. And then usually you find those examples demonstrate other skills as well, but you want to have 5 or 6 stories that are prepared that you can tell very easily. And they should be based on or kind of framed out of the main skills that a job is looking for. I like to use the CART framework. So I know some people like STAR, the situation, task, action, result, but I find our tendency is to spend too much time on the wind up, situation, and task. So I don't like that STAR gives those things 2 bullet points already, because we already spend too much time there. So I use CART, which is context, action, result, and then tie back. What does that mean to the company? How does it connect back to their skills? Is there a question that you could ask where you can continue the conversation? That's the tie back piece. So context is the why. Why were you doing this? What was going on? What was the situation? And again, all of these pieces you want to keep relevant to the job, the company, the audience as much as possible. With the context, that's extremely true. You don't want too much lead into the story. People get lost in that point. So you've got a short context. Then you've got your action. This is what you did. And it's very important that you're able to speak to what you actually did, in addition to if there was a team that was working on something. One of my stories I reference a lot was a person that I was interviewing for a nonprofit coordinator role. And it was a small nonprofit. They had 4 employees. So if this person got the job, they were going to be working independently a lot. There wasn't like this huge team that was going to be able to support them, right? And we were asking questions in the interview, and they kept saying, we, team. And I just zeroed in on it, and I asked, tell me about what your role was in that. And the person couldn't answer it. And after they left and this team sat down to debrief, I said, I just don't think this person can work independently and do what needs to be done without the we. And so we didn't move them forward in the process for that interview. So you've got to be able to, yes, talk about collaboration, leadership, all of the things that might be important for whatever level of role you're coming in at, and what was your role in the stories and accomplishments that you're telling. Then you've got the results, and the result usually reflects back to the context of why were you doing it? Did you achieve that result? And that can be, in this day and age, we're looking for money. I know we've talked a lot about layoffs and layoffs being caused by AI, but the other big factor in layoffs right now is profitability. Companies have shifted, investors have shifted to caring about, potential and kind of that blue sky to what are you bringing in right now? What's your profitability? When are you going to go profitable? All of those things are what investors are looking for right now. So for every position, every person that's interviewing right now, they've got to be able to talk about making money, saving money, the things that impact, top and bottom line, because that is critical for every organization always, but even more so today. So those stories and that result, you want to help people connect the dots. Not all of us are in revenue generating or cost saving roles, but for some reason, your job has to contribute to the company's bottom line, or they wouldn't spend money on it, right? And so we've got to figure that out and be able to share how that story related to the company's profitability, making customers happy, all of those things that we do, combine it back as much as possible to the bottom line. Then the tie back is making sure it addresses the skill. So sometimes this is a checker where we go through the story and then we say, okay, what parts of that story are most relevant to the job and the skill set right now? But then live in an interview, the tie back might sound like, how do you handle that situation here? So they ask, tell me about a time you dealt with a difficult customer. You said your context, you talk about the action, you say the result, and then you say, what's your policy like for handling that type of situation here? That type of question can work really well in a hiring manager or a team interview. It's not going to work as well in an HR screening type of interview, but you have it kind of at your ready so that you can either ask the question or make even a statement in that HR type interview. I might say, I look forward to, finding out more about your policies of how you let your customer service people make customers happy, whatever that might be. So it's that tie back to make it feel like I'm already in the job and I'm thinking about what would I do in your organization with this story that we just had. And that's that tie back piece that's really critical. So cart, I would say you put all your stories in the cart so you can pull them with you to the interview. Now that piece of the preparation is critical. And again, you can start doing that now. Start getting those stories, aligning your stories to the competencies that a job's going to be looking for. You can do that now so that when you get the interview, then you're just adjusting, targeting, picking the stories that are most relevant for this specific job, this specific company, but you've already got them all planned out. And that's really what we want. We want that preparation and that practice. And yes, I want you to have said it out loud, tell the story. You don't have to try to memorize it necessarily, write it all down, but start internalizing those stories so that when you get into the interview and you're nervous, they come more second nature and you can be a little bit more flexible and adaptive with them than you can if you just have bullet points and you're trying to tell the story for the first time ever in that situation. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will talk more about this interview preparation. And like I said, if you missed the first part of it here, go back and watch some of Kathleen's takeaways. And I'm excited to see her in person. If you're a career services provider, check it out. Join us in person April 6th in Baltimore. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we'll go through a few more interview tips to help you put it all together and get your clients those interview successes that they're looking for. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
You know that the career landscape has changed and that you need to be proactive about managing your career. You can have the foresight, skills, and confidence you need to take charge of your career and seize opportunities. A strategic advantage and career expert, Marie Zimenoff has helped thousands of leaders like you get focused, get found, and get hired. Visit getcareersmart.com to find out more. That's getcareersmart.com or call 800-521-2080 to schedule your complimentary consultation.
Follow Voice America at facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts. You are tuned in to the Career Confidant with Marie Zimenoff. If you have a question or comment for Marie or her guest today, please call 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You may also send an email to marie@strategicadvantage.com. Now, back to the Career Confidant.
Welcome back to the Career Confidant. And today we've been talking about interview preparation. And we've talked about how to handle some of the unexpected things that come up with technology, talked about preparation. And this is another part of preparation, is doing anything you can to really understand how the interview is going to happen. So what's the technology going to be? What's the process look like? Who are you going to be interviewing? Hopefully you get all of that information, but if the recruiter is busy or something's going on, you may have to ask, can you send me the name of the folks that I'll be interviewing with and the technology that we'll be using, so that you know that up front and you can prepare for it, as Kathleen was talking about, doing some kind of practice, like real life practice on Zoom or on WebEx or whatever the system is that you're going to be using, so that you're not fumbling around, so you know how you're going to look. I recommend that you do that test dressed like you're going to dress and sitting in the place where you're going to sit. So you can see, does this color look okay? Does it wash me out? Does it, whatever it might be, is it too loud? I've got my little blings on today, right? See, it's a little busy. So we want to think about all of those things ahead of time so that when you show up again, those aren't things you're nervous about. They're not adding to that, pile of anxiety, but you've got that piece of it set. You've tested the technology. There's always going to be last minute things that come up. But you've tested it, you know how it operates, you know how to switch between screens, turn off your view, but still have other people see you. Whatever it is that you want to be able to do to make it easier for yourself, you want to have practiced that ahead of time. And again, have the lighting and the clothing and the background, all of that figured out before you get too far down the road so that you can show up more ready to just focus on the connection. So here's the number one thing I would say that people get wrong about interviewing is thinking it's about what you say. It really isn't about what you say. It's about the connection that you make with the people on the other side of the table or the screen. Now, unfortunately, the screen makes that harder. And so that means we have to practice thinking about the camera and looking at the camera and thinking about that there's a human on the other side of the camera. And I really have to pretend that I'm talking to this, to the people, not to the camera. So when I jump on something, on Zoom, or if I'm doing a presentation, I always think about it as that's the room and the people, the camera is the room, and I'm engaging with that camera just like I would engage with a room if I was in front of the room. If I'm in a one-on-one, I'm really thinking about how that camera is you, and I want to connect with you. And I want to pretend like we're in person so that I have that as much as possible, that same warmth and social connection. And I can only do that if I really think about it and put the intention out there that I'm going to talk to a person. I've got to think about that. And in some ways, that might be more helpful for people even who are shy or introverted, or maybe even some types of neurodiversity, because I can practice just looking at the camera and thinking about the camera as my connection point and make it really concrete, right? That this is where I'm putting my focus. Now, for those of us who are a little bit more introverted, that's where our language is really powerful. So if I say I'm excited, if I say I'm passionate, if I say whatever word is true for me, feels authentic to me, but has that little bit of emotion behind it, I can get across those emotions, even though I may not be showing them non-verbally because I'm nervous. And hopefully, as I say some of those emotional words, my non-verbals will start to match them, and then it makes it easier. The other thing you can do is just practice a relaxed smile. So how do you sit with your mouth kind of in that relaxed smile, being careful of, the resting, what face? I want to be careful of that. And we're just kind of practicing that this is how we want to appear. And it might help to think about someone else. Some people will put like a picture of someone that they love next to the camera so that it almost immediately requires that smile because you're looking at that person's face, or your dog or your cat or whatever, right? Whatever picture might help you get that relaxed smile, because it is an emotional indicator in and of itself. If I'm smiling, you think, oh, this person's happy, engaged, all of those things. So we've got to work on some of those nonverbals and practice that and create some cues for ourselves just to help make sure we show up in the best way we can on video, because video is hard, right? We want to make sure we're engaged. We want to make sure we're thinking about that as the other side. And even when someone else is talking, which can be hard if you're on a Zoom with multiple people, when someone else is talking, to realize that the spotlight is still on you. So if I'm interviewing with 3 other people and one of them is talking, the other people in the room are likely not looking at them. They're likely still looking at me. So I have to manage my facial reactions a little bit. So it's funny. I saw some weird video on, this Princess Catherine was frowning during this presentation, but people do read too much into those things, right? So having a knowledge of and a little bit of awareness of how are you listening and resting your face and showing that you're paying attention, but being careful about those reactions, that is all something that we can practice and think about ahead of time so that you're really worried about the connection with the other interviewers. And that's why I want you to practice your stories, because I don't want you in the interview thinking about what am I going to say, or gosh, did that story go the way I wanted it to? I want you in the interview thinking about how is that other person taking my story, and are they listening? Are they engaging? Have they tuned out? Should I shorten the story up and wrap it up already? And we can only pay attention to the other people on the call or in the room if we're comfortable enough with our own content that we're not just thinking about what we're saying and what we're going to say and what we did say, right? We've got to be in the moment enough to pay attention to and engage with and connect with the other people in the room. And that's what we want to be there to do. Yes, what you say is going to demonstrate your skills, but they've already decided you're qualified or they wouldn't be interviewing you. So they're looking for those skills in action. Get those stories ready so you can show them those skills in action, but then be there to connect and have the ability to focus on that because you've practiced, you're prepared, you're ready to go. That's our goal when we walk into those rooms. So thinking about your preparation, going back and getting your skill sets, tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume. You want to start with those answers, get them prepared. Then when you learn about the specific company that you'll be interviewing with, you want to ask as many questions as you can, get all the information about the technology, the who and the et cetera, so you can do even deeper, more specific research and preparation for those opportunities, for that specific opportunity. And then when you show up, you're trying to let all of that just be and bubble up and focus on the person in front of you or the people in front of you. And how can you build rapport with them? How can you see if they're going to be a good fit for you to work with too? That's where you want your focus to be when you're in the interview, is on the people, not the content. And if you can do that, you'll find you get better results. Even if you don't get the job, you maintain those relationships and perhaps get other opportunities later or referral opportunities outside of that one. We will be back on the Career Confidant to give you more great information from our colleagues here in the career space. If you have topics you think we should cover or questions you want us to answer, please reach out to Marie, Marie, at careerthoughtleaders.com, and we will look forward to seeing you right back here again on the Career Confidant.
Thank you for listening to the Career Confidant. Marie Zimenoff will return again with another terrific guest next Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific on the Voice America Business Channel. Be sure to join us then.